Both armies march toward each other across the plain, bronze armor flashing in the sun, dust rising in clouds. The earth shakes under 10,000 feet. Paris steps out from the Trojan lines. Leopard skin over his shoulders, bow in hand, a handsome grin on his face. He challenges any Greek to single combat. Menelaus sees him and leaps from his chariot like a lion spotting a deer. The wronged husband, red-faced and roaring, charges straight at the man who stole his wife. Paris takes one look at Menelaus bearing down on him, and his courage evaporates. He stumbles backward into the Trojan ranks, face white, hands trembling. Hector is disgusted. Shamed by his brother's words, Paris agrees to fight Menelaus one-on-one. Winner takes Helen. Both armies sit down to watch, the whole war resting on two men. Up on Troy's walls, Helen sits among the elders. Old Priam asks her gently, "Tell me, who is that massive warrior down there?" She names each Greek hero with quiet sorrow. The duel begins and Menelaus dominates completely. He shatters Paris's helmet crest, snaps his sword against Paris's shield, then grabs the chinstrap and starts dragging him through the dust. Then Aphrodite intervenes. The goddess of love snaps the chinstrap like thread, wraps Paris in golden mist, and carries him away, straight to his own bedroom in Troy. Aphrodite finds Helen on the walls and commands her to go to Paris. Helen recognizes the goddess through her disguise and resists. But no mortal defies Aphrodite for long. Helen finds Paris lounging clean and perfumed on their bed. Her contempt is withering. She wishes aloud he had died on the field. He barely notices her anger. On the plain, Agamemnon declares Menelaus the winner. He demands Troy surrender Helen and pay compensation. For a breath, it seems the war might actually end. But on Olympus, Athena and Hera will not allow peace. They want Troy destroyed completely. They whisper, they scheme. They send a goddess down to shatter the truce. Athena disguises herself as a Trojan warrior and whispers to the archer Pandarus. "Imagine the glory," she says, "if you shot Menelaus right now." He reaches for his bow. The arrow flies. It strikes Menelaus in the belt. Blood blooms on his tunic. The truce is broken. Both armies roar to their feet and the killing begins again. Full battle erupts across the Trojan plain. Homer names each man who falls. Where he came from, who his father was, how he died. Even the smallest death matters. Diomedes blazes through the Trojan ranks like a brush fire. Athena has filled him with divine courage. His armor shines, his spear never misses. Warriors scatter before him. Diomedes wounds Aphrodite herself. The goddess reaches down to rescue her son Aeneas, and Diomedes drives his spear into her wrist. A god bleeds golden ichor. Aphrodite flees to Olympus sobbing. Her mother Dione comforts her while Athena and Hera mock her openly. Even gods can be humiliated when they meddle in mortal wars. Diomedes goes even further. He charges Ares himself, the god of war, towering and terrible in black armor. Athena guides the spear. The god of war screams. Ares screams with the voice of 10,000 men. The entire battlefield freezes. Then the god of war flees to Olympus, humiliated, clutching his wound and cursing mortals. Without Ares, the Trojans falter, but Hector rallies them with his voice alone. He runs along the line, shouting courage into every man, lifting the fallen back to their feet. Hector rides back through Troy's gates. He needs the women of the city to pray to Athena. Perhaps the goddess can be persuaded to show mercy and slow Diomedes' rampage. His mother Hecuba meets him first. She offers wine, begs him to rest. Hector refuses. His hands are bloody. He cannot pour a libation to the gods with unwashed hands. Hector storms into Paris's bedroom and finds his brother polishing his armor like he's preparing for a parade, not a battle. Helen sits nearby, supervising her maids. Hector's patience snap. Now comes the scene that breaks every heart that hears it. Hector goes looking for his wife Andromache. He finds her at the Scaean gate, their baby boy in her arms. Andromache begs him to stay, her voice breaking. "You are my father now," she says, "my mother. All of them killed by Achilles. You are everything I have left." Hector reaches for his baby son. But little Astyanax screams and recoils. terrified by the bronze helmet with its enormous horsehair plume nodding above his father's face. Both parents laugh through their tears. Hector removes the terrifying helmet, sets it on the ground, and lifts his son. He kisses the boy and prays for his future. He hands the baby back to Andromache. "I know Troy will fall someday," he says. "I know you'll be taken as a slave. But I cannot hide. I must fight. Honor demands it." Hector walks out through the gate and doesn't look back. Behind him, Andromache watches until he disappears into the dust. She weeps as if he's already dead. Back on the field, Hector meets Ajax. Great Ajax, the biggest warrior in the Greek army, carrying a shield like a wall of bronze. They fight as the sun goes down. Night falls and heralds call a stop. Neither man has won. They exchange gifts. Hector gives a sword, Ajax gives a war belt. Enemies honoring each other between blows. The Greeks build a wall and trench around their ships. Stakes sharpened, stones piled high. After 10 years of attacking Troy, now they are the ones digging in for defense. Zeus sits on Mount Ida overlooking Troy and issues his decree. No god may interfere. He alone will steer this war now. The other gods fall silent, obedient and afraid. Zeus tips the golden scales of fate. The Greek side sinks. Immediately the battle turns. Trojans surge forward. Greeks stumble backward. The divine hand is pushing them toward doom. Hector drives the Greeks back toward their ships. Night falls, but the Trojans don't retreat. They camp on the plain, lighting 1,000 fires, closer to the ships than ever before. In the Greek camp, panic sets in. Agamemnon paces before his commanders, face gray with fear. He suggests what no king should. Maybe they should give up and sail home. Old Nestor speaks again. "There is only one solution," he says carefully. "You wronged Achilles. Send an embassy. Offer everything you took and more. Beg if you have to." 3 men are chosen for the embassy. Odysseus, the cleverest talker. Ajax, the most respected fighter. And old Phoenix, who raised Achilles as a boy. They walk through the dark camp. They find Achilles playing his lyre with Patroclus listening quietly beside him. Odysseus delivers Agamemnon's offer. 7 tripods, 10 bars of gold, 20 cauldrons, Briseis returned untouched. Achilles listens. Then he rejects everything. Not for all the gold in the world. Agamemnon dishonored him. And no treasure can buy back what was taken. His dignity, his worth. Old Phoenix weeps openly. He raised this boy. He tells the story of Meleager, another hero who refused to fight until it was almost too late, and lost everything because of it. Ajax speaks last and speaks plainly. "We came as friends. Even blood enemies accept payment for a murdered kinsman. Why can't you accept this and return to us?" Something in Ajax's honesty reaches Achilles. He softens, not enough to fight, but enough to promise he won't sail home. He'll wait, he'll watch, but he will not fight. The 3 envoys walk back through the dark camp in silence. Odysseus, Ajax, Phoenix, each carrying the weight of failure. Tomorrow, the Greeks face the Trojans without their champion. Deep in the night, Odysseus and Diomedes slip out of camp on a secret mission. 2 shadows moving through the darkness between the armies, armed with knives and cunning. They catch a Trojan spy named Dolon creeping through the same darkness. He squeals everything. Troop positions, the location of fresh Thracian allies, where the best horses sleep. They kill Dolon, then steal through the sleeping Thracian camp like wolves among sheep. Diomedes slaughters 12 warriors in their beds, while Odysseus unhitches the snow, white horses. Dawn breaks over the plain of Troy. Rose-pink light touches the walls. Zeus watches from Mount Ida, holding the threads of battle in his hands, deciding who lives today. Agamemnon has his finest hour. Armored in magnificent bronze, he cuts through the Trojan lines like a reaper through wheat. For one blazing morning, the king fights like a hero. But a Trojan spear finds Agamemnon's arm. Blood soaks through his sleeve. The pain hits like fire, and the king must be carried from the field. Greek momentum dies with his departure. Diomedes is next. Paris draws his bow from behind a pillar, a coward's weapon from a coward's hiding place, and puts an arrow through the hero's foot, another champion down. Odysseus finds himself surrounded, Trojans closing in from every side. A spear punches through his ribs. He fights on bleeding, spinning to face each attacker, refusing to fall. Only Ajax remains standing. Massive immovable Ajax, his tower shield covering the retreat. Step by slow step, he backs toward the ships, holding off the entire Trojan army alone. Hector reaches the Greek wall. He picks up a boulder that 2 ordinary men couldn't lift and hurls it at the gates. The timber explodes. Stones scatter. The wall is breached. For the first time in 10 years, Trojans fight among the Greek ships. Hector reaches for a torch. If the ships burn, the Greeks are stranded. No escape. Total annihilation. Through the smoke and screaming, Achilles watches from the entrance of his tent. He can see the fires. He can hear his comrades dying. And he does not move. Patroclus runs to Achilles weeping. Real tears streaming down his face. Men are dying, the ships are burning, and you sit here. Achilles has never seen his friend like this. If you won't go, Patroclus says, let me go. Give me your armor. The Trojans will think Achilles has returned. Just the sight of your helmet might turn the tide. Achilles agrees. But he grips Patroclus by the arm and makes him swear. Drive them from the ships, then stop. Come back to me. Do not chase them to Troy's walls. Patroclus puts on Achilles' armor piece by piece. The greaves, the breastplate, the heavy shield. Last, the helmet with its horsehair plume. He looks like Achilles. He is not Achilles. The Myrmidons charge out of camp like wasps pouring from a kicked nest. 2,500 fresh warriors, who haven't fought in weeks, hungry and sharp, screaming Achilles' name. The Trojans see the golden armor and the horsehair plume, and panic spreads like fire in dry grass.
Achilles! Achilles is back!
Men who were winning moments ago start running. Patroclus drives the Trojans back from the ships. The fires are beaten out. Greek sailors stamp on embers and weep with relief. The fleet is saved, but Patroclus doesn't stop. Patroclus kills Sarpedon, the greatest Trojan ally, a prince of Lycia and a son of Zeus himself. Even the king of gods cannot save his own child from mortal fate. Zeus sends Sleep and Death, twin brothers, gentle as the evening, to carry Sarpedon's body home to Lycia. They lift him like a sleeping child and fly across the sea. Patroclus is magnificent. He fights like a man possessed, but he has forgotten Achilles' warning completely. He pushes on toward Troy's walls, drunk on glory and impossible success. 3 times Patroclus charges the walls of Troy itself. 3 times Apollo stands on the ramparts and shoves him back with divine hands. The god's voice thunders, "You are not Achilles." Apollo strikes from behind. The god's hand slaps the helmet from Patroclus's head. His spear shatters. His shield strap breaks. In one instant, the divine protection is stripped away entirely. Stunned and half naked, Patroclus stumbles on the dusty plain. A Trojan named Euphorbus darts in from behind and drives a spear between his shoulder blades. He falls to one knee. Hector sees his chance and drives his spear through Patroclus's belly. The thrust goes deep. Patroclus crashes forward into the dust. The plain goes quiet around his falling body. With his last breath, Patroclus looks up at Hector and speaks. "You think you're great? Apollo stunned me, Euphorbus wounded me. You were only third, and your own death walks close behind." The fight over Patroclus's body is savage. Greeks and Trojans hurl themselves at each other for hours, back and forth across the corpse, neither side willing to give ground. Hector strips Achilles' magnificent armor from the dead body and puts it on himself. Now he wears the golden war gear of the man he will soon face. The irony cuts deep. Menelaus and Ajax refuse to abandon the naked body. They fight standing over Patroclus like lions over a kill, driving back every Trojan who comes near, shields dented and bloody. A runner named Antilochus sprints through the battle toward the Myrmidon camp. He carries the worst possible news. He finds Achilles and speaks the words that change everything. Achilles hears the words and a sound comes out of him that isn't quite human. He falls to the ground. His hands claw at the sand. Dust blackens his golden hair. Patroclus is dead. He pours black ash over his head. He tears at his own hair. His grief is so loud that the slave women in the camp hear and begin wailing in sympathy. The whole camp mourns. Thetis hears her son's wail from the bottom of the sea. She knows what it means. She rises through the waves a second time, bringing her grief to meet his grief. Thetis tells him the truth he already knows. If you kill Hector, your own death follows shortly after. That is the prophecy. That is the price. There's no way around it. Achilles doesn't hesitate. Then let me die, he says. I wasn't there to save Patroclus. What kind of life is worth living after that? Bring me armor. I'm going to kill Hector. Thetis promises new armor forged by Hephaestus, the god of the forge. She rises into the sky toward Olympus. Below, Achilles stands alone on the beach, already a dead man walking. On Olympus, Hephaestus works his forge. 20 golden bellows roar to life. The forge god limps between fire and anvil, his scarred hands shaping the most famous armor in all of literature. The shield of Achilles. Homer spends pages on this single object, because it isn't just a shield. It's a picture of the entire world, everything worth fighting for, everything worth losing. 2 cities gleam on the shield's surface. The first is at peace. A wedding procession winds through the streets, musicians play, torches glow, and young people dance in celebration. The second city is at war. 2 armies surround it. Inside, the defenders debate whether to fight or surrender. Outside, an ambush waits by a river. Even on a shield, Homer tells stories. Farmland and vineyards cover the next ring. Oxen plow dark earth. Boys pick grapes while a child plays the lyre. Then a great dance. Young men and women turning in circles. Around the very edge, the great river ocean flows. The boundary of the known world. Everything inside it is human. Everything beyond is mystery. The shield holds it all. Thetis brings the divine armor to her son at dawn. She lays it before him, and it blazes like a star fallen to earth. No mortal craftsman could have made this. Achilles stare. Achilles calls a general assembly. He stands before the entire Greek army and publicly ends his quarrel with Agamemnon. My anger cost us everything, he says. Patroclus is dead because of me. Agamemnon accepts the reconciliation but blames the spirit of Ate, divine delusion, for his behavior. It wasn't my fault, he insists. Even Zeus is sometimes blinded by Ate. Briseis is brought to view Patroclus's body. She falls across him weeping. He was the only one who was kind to her, she says. He promised she would be Achilles' bride. Now he's gone. Achilles refuses all food. The other warriors eat before battle, but he cannot swallow anything. How can he eat when Patroclus lies unburied? Only revenge will feed him now. He puts on the divine armor, piece by piece. Greaves that fit like they were poured from liquid silver. Braceplate that molds to his chest. The great shield on his arm. And then the helmet. His immortal horses speak to him. We will carry you safely today, they say. But know this, your death day is coming soon. Even we cannot outrun your fate. Achilles doesn't flinch. Achilles mounts his chariot and thunders onto the battlefield. The divine armor blazes so bright that warriors on both sides shield their eyes. The earth shakes beneath his wheels. Zeus lifts his ban. The gods may fight now. Choose your sides. Olympus splits in half. Athena and Hera for the Greeks, Apollo and Aphrodite for Troy. Heaven goes to war. Athena screams her war cry and the earth trembles. Poseidon shakes the ground until Troy's foundations crack. Ares howls back. The gods are fighting above while mortals die below. Achilles cuts through the Trojan ranks like wildfire through a summer forest. Homer compares him to a force of nature. Not a man fighting other men, but a catastrophe wearing armor. Young Trojan warriors kneel before him begging for mercy. Take me alive, they plead. My father will pay ransom. Achilles drives his spear through each one. Grief has made him merciless. He captures 12 Trojan youths alive, not for ransom, but for sacrifice. He binds their hands and sends them back to the ships. They will burn on Patroclus's funeral pyre. Achilles meets Lycon, one of Priam's younger sons. The boy has been captured before and ransomed. He kneels, grabs Achilles' knees, and begs. Not this time, Achilles says. Die, friend, Achilles tells him. Why are you crying? Patroclus died, and he was far better than you. Even I will die soon. No one escapes. He kills the boy in the river. The Scamander River fills with so many bodies that the water can no longer flow. Corpses dam the current. Blood turns the water dark. The river itself begins to choke with death. The river god Scamander rises from his waters in fury.
Enough!
He sends towering walls of water at Achilles. Even the greatest warrior alive cannot fight a river. The flood drags him under. Achilles fights a river. Picture that. Water surging around him, pulling at his legs, trying to drown the man who filled it with corpses. He swings his sword at the current itself. Hephaestus saves him. The forge god sends divine fire across the plain. The river boils, steam screaming skyward, fish thrashing in the heat. Scamander surrenders his banks smoking and bare. The surviving Trojans flee toward the city in a panicked stampede. Thousands of warriors cramming through the gates, pushing and shoving. The drawbridge groaning under the weight of terror. Apollo buys the Trojans time. He takes the shape of a fleeing warrior and leads Achilles on a chase across the plain, away from the gates, while the real Trojans scramble inside. Apollo turns and reveals himself. Foolish mortal, he laughs. You cannot catch a god. While you chased me, every Trojan reached safety behind their walls. Every Trojan except one. Hector stands alone outside the walls of Troy. Every other Trojan has fled behind the gates. But Hector cannot make himself go in. He waits for Achilles like a man waiting for death. From high on the walls, old Priam sees Achilles coming. He screams down to his son, "Come inside, Hector, please. Do not face that man alone. He will kill you, I know it." Hecuba appears beside Priam. She tears open her robe and bares the breast that nursed him. "Remember this," she wails. "Remember the milk I gave you. Come inside, come home to us." Hector hears them. He wants to go inside, but his feet won't move. Shame roots him to the spot. He led the army when others said retreat. All those deaths are on him if he hides now. His mind races. Maybe I could offer to return Helen and half of Troy's treasury. Maybe I could negotiate. Then he answers himself. No, Achilles won't talk. Achilles will kill me on sight. Then Achilles appears, blazing in divine armor, running at full speed, spear leveled. The light off his shield is blinding. He looks like Ares himself. No, he looks worse than Ares. And Hector's courage breaks. He turns, he runs. The greatest warrior of Troy, the man who fought Ajax to a standstill, who smashed the Greek wall. He runs from Achilles like a fawn. 3 times around the walls of Troy, Achilles chasing Hector, both running at full speed, past the watchtower, past the fig tree, past the washing pools, the whole city watching from above. They pass the springs where Trojan women once washed clothes in peacetime. Hot spring and cold spring side by side. Homer pauses here to remind us of the life this war destroys. On Olympus, Zeus lifts his golden scales. He places the fate of Achilles on one side, the fate of Hector on the other. Hector's side sinks toward death. The decision is final. Apollo, who has protected Hector through the entire war, steps back. The sun god withdraws his divine shield. Hector runs on, not knowing he is suddenly, terribly alone. Athena appears beside Hector disguised as his brother Deiphobus. Together, she says, we can face him. 2 against 1. Hector's heart lifts. He believes his brother has come to die beside him. Hector stops running. He plants his feet and turns to face Achilles at last. His breathing steadies. His grip tightens on his spear. If this is the end, he'll meet it standing. Hector calls out to Achilles, "Let's make a pact. Whoever wins, return the body to the other's people. Give us that much dignity. Even in death, let us be treated as men." Achilles' answer is ice. "There are no pacts between lions and men. I will kill you and give your body to the dogs." The hatred in his voice makes the air colder. Hector hurls his spear first. A perfect throw, straight at Achilles' center. It strikes the divine shield, and bounces off like a stick thrown at a wall the god-forged metal holds. Hector turns to Deiphobus for a second spear. But Deiphobus is gone. The space beside him is empty. No brother, no ally, no one. The goddess has vanished, and with her, his last hope. Understanding floods through Hector like cold water. The gods have tricked him. They have brought him here to die. There is no escape, no rescue, no brother, no hope, only this last fight. So this is how it ends, Hector thinks. Then let me not die without glory. Let me do something great first. Something that the men of future generations will hear about and remember. He draws his sword and charges one last rush, straight at Achilles. Like an eagle diving at a lamb. Except this lamb wears divine armor, and has been waiting for this moment for days. Achilles knows every gap in that armor. He wore it himself for years. He sees the one opening, the throat, where the collarbone meets the neck. His eyes lock on the spot. The spear drives through Hector's throat. Not deep enough to cut the windpipe entirely. Homer is specific about this. Hector can still speak. Achilles wanted him to be able to speak. Hector falls into the dust. With his last breath he begs, "Give my body back to my father. Let my parents bury me." Even this small mercy from the man who killed him. Achilles refuses. "I wish I could eat you raw," he says. "No amount of gold your father offers will save your body from the dogs and birds." The rage consumes even this moment of victory. Hector dies with prophecy on his lips. "Beware," he whispers. "Paris and Apollo will kill you at this very gate." Then the darkness takes him, his eyes close. Hector, tamer of horses, is gone. The Greek warriors gather around Hector's body. Each man stabs the corpse. Even dead, they feared him. Each warrior takes his turn saying, "He's softer now than when he burned our ships." Achilles pierces Hector's ankles between tendon and bone. He threads leather straps through the holes and ties the body to the back of his chariot. What comes next haunts the imagination. He drags Hector behind his chariot around the walls of Troy. Dust billows. The body bounces over stones. Dark hair trails in the dirt. Above on the walls, an entire city watches their hero destroyed. From the walls, Priam screams. An old king tearing at his white hair, beating his head against stone. Hecuba wails beside him, ripping her veil. A sound rises from Troy that is barely human. Andromache hasn't heard yet. She's at home weaving, heating bathwater for Hector's return. Then she hears the wailing from the walls. She drops her shuttle and runs. She already knows. She reaches the wall and looks down. She sees her husband's body dragged behind Achilles' chariot. The world goes black. She faints. Her wedding veil falls from her head. The marriage symbolically ended. When she wakes, her grief pours out in words. "My son will grow up fatherless. Other children will push him from feasts. No one will protect him. He'll be called the orphan of Hector." Achilles returns to camp and drags Hector's body around Patroclus's funeral bier. 3 times around the corpse of his beloved friend, as if the desecration could somehow bring Patroclus back. The funeral of Patroclus is enormous, a pyre 100 feet across, sheep cattle, jars of honey and oil heaped on the timber. The 12 captured Trojans are added. Achilles lights the fire. That night, Patroclus visits Achilles in a dream. "Bury me quickly," the ghost says, "so I can cross the river into the land of the dead. I'm stuck at the threshold, waiting for you." Achilles reaches for him. His arms close on nothing. The ghost slips through his hands like smoke. Patroclus vanishes with a thin cry, sinking into the earth. Achilles wakes with wet cheeks. After the burial, funeral games. Chariot races thunder across the beach. Warriors box and wrestle. Archers compete. Even in grief, the Greeks honor their dead with the spectacle of living. Even in the middle of funeral games, men argue about rules and prizes. Antilochus protests a racing call. Menelaus demands an apology. Life insists on continuing messy and petty and alive. But Achilles cannot stop punishing Hector. Every morning at dawn, he ties the body to his chariot and drags it around Patroclus's tomb. Again and again, day after day after day, the gods watch from Olympus and grow troubled. Apollo keeps Hector's body from decaying, a miracle of divine protection. But the desecration continues. Something must be done, something extraordinary. 12 days pass. Every morning Achilles drags Hector's body. Every evening he sits by Patroclus's tomb and talks to the dead. The rage is burning itself hollow from the inside. On Olympus, the gods can bear it no longer. Apollo speaks first. This is wrong. Achilles has the heart of a lion, but none of a lion's natural sense. He has forgotten what it means to be human. Zeus makes his decision. He sends Thetis to tell Achilles release the body. And he sends the rainbow goddess Iris to tell Priam, go to your enemy's tent, alone with ransom tonight. Iris finds Priam in his palace, collapsed on the floor of his courtyard, rolling in filth and grief. She tells him Zeus's message, go to Achilles with treasure. He will give your son back. Priam orders his surviving sons to load a wagon. The finest treasures of Troy, 12 embroidered robes, gold bars, silver goblets, a magnificent cloak. Everything a father can offer for a body. Hecuba begs him not to go. That man is a savage, she says. He has no pity. He'll kill you the moment he sees you. But Priam has made his choice. His fear is smaller than his love. I would rather die at Achilles' feet, Priam says, than sit here another night wondering what the dogs are doing to my boy's body. He climbs onto the wagon and drives into the darkness. On the dark plain, a young man appears beside the wagon. Handsome, gentle, offering to guide them. It's Hermes, disguised as a Greek soldier. Zeus has sent a god to protect the old king. Hermes leads the wagon through the sleeping Greek camp, past snoring sentries, past guard posts, past rows of ships and tents. Not a single alarm sounds. Divine magic parts the darkness like water. Priam enters Achilles' tent. Think about what this means. An old unarmed king walking alone into the shelter of the man who killed his son. This is the bravest act in the entire poem. Before anyone can react, Priam crosses the tent and kneels. He takes Achilles' hands, the hands that killed Hector, and kisses them. The tent goes absolutely still. No one breathes. Remember your own father, Priam whispers. Peleus, he is old like me. He waits for a son who will never come home. At least he can still hope. I have no hope left. I kiss the hands that killed my children. Achilles thinks of his father Peleus, old alone in Phthia, waiting for a son who chose glory over homecoming. A son who will die young on foreign sand. The grief hits him like a wave. Both men weep. The killer and the father, weeping together in a tent by lamplight. Achilles cries for Peleus and for Patroclus. Priam cries for Hector. Their grief becomes one sound. When the tears are spent, Achilles gently lifts the old man up. He marvels at Priam's courage. What heart it must take, he says, to sit before the man who destroyed your world. Achilles orders Hector's body washed and anointed with oil. He has his women wrap it in the finest linen, and a beautiful cloak from Priam's own ransom. The body is made ready at last. Achilles tells Priam he moved the body himself, so the old man wouldn't see the damage and lose his composure. Even now, Achilles fears his own rage could return if provoked. He's holding himself together. They share a meal, enemies sitting across a table, eating bread and meat by lamplight. Priam studies Achilles and marvels at his beauty. Achilles studies Priam and marvels at his dignity. Achilles prepares a bed for Priam. How many days do you need for the funeral, he asks. The simple question carries the weight of a truce. For the first time in 10 years, a warrior offers peace. Priam asks for 11 days, 9 to mourn, 1 to build the pyre, 1 to bury. Achilles nods. For 11 days I will hold back the Greek army. You have my word, and he means it. Hermes wakes Priam before dawn. You must leave now, the god whispers. If the other Greeks find a Trojan king in their camp, the price will be higher than any ransom. Go quickly. The wagon rolls back across the dark plain toward Troy. Priam drives with his dead son beside him, wrapped in linen and purple cloth. The sky lightens. The walls of home grow closer. Cassandra sees them first from the high walls. Priam's daughter, the prophetess no one believes, spots the wagon and screams to the city. Come,
All of Troy! Father brings Hector home!
The women of Troy pour out through the gates weeping. The whole city empties. They surround the wagon, reaching for Hector's body, tearing their hair. The sound of collective grief like a storm. Andromache reaches the wagon and cradles Hector's head in her arms. She speaks through sobs. You left me a widow. Our son has no protector. He'll grow up among enemies who despise his father's name. Hecuba mourns next. Of all my sons, she weeps, you were the finest. Even the gods loved you. Look, they kept your face perfect even in death, my dearest boy, my brightest star. Last to mourn is Helen. Of all the people in Troy, she says, Hector was the only one who was truly kind to me. He never spoke a cruel word. Now my only protector is gone. For 9 days the Trojans gather wood. An entire forest felled for Hector's pyre. Men and mules drag timber from the mountain slopes. The city prepares the largest funeral Troy has ever seen. On the 10th day they carry Hector out. All of Troy follows. The body laid on the towering pyre, surrounded by offerings. Jars of fat, amphorae of honey. Weapons he carried, flowers from Andromache's garden. They light the pyre. Flames climb the stacked timber and reach for the sky. Smoke rises in a great column visible for miles. Hector burns under the wide Trojan sky, and the whole city watches. When the flames die, they quench the embers with dark wine. The ashes hiss and steam. Then Hector's brothers and friends gather the white bones, weeping, handling each fragment with care. They place the bones in a golden chest and wrap it in soft purple cloth. The same color as Hector's cloak. The same color he wore when he walked out through the gate for the last time. They bury the chest in a hollow grave and pile stones over it. A mound rises on the plain of Troy. Then they return to Priam's palace for the funeral feast. Wine poured, bread broken, grief shared. And Homer ends the poem with one simple line. Such were the funeral rites of Hector, tamer of horses. That's it. No victory, no resolution. Just a burial and a name and silence. The poem ends not with a Greek victory, but with a Trojan funeral. Not with the fall of Troy, but with the burial of its defender. Homer chose compassion as his final word. Think about that choice. This is a war poem that ends with an act of mercy. A story of rage that concludes with tenderness. The same man who dragged a body through the dust also washed it and gave it back. Achilles will die soon after the poem ends. Paris will shoot an arrow guided by Apollo, and it will find the one vulnerable spot, his heel. The greatest warrior falls to the weakest prince. Troy will fall. The wooden horse, the midnight ambush, the city in flames. Priam killed at his own altar. Andromache enslaved. Little Astyanax thrown from the walls. Homer spares us these horrors. But Homer chose to end here. At the moment when an enemy showed mercy. When a father's love crossed the boundary of war. When two broken men sat together and wept. That's the real ending. What makes the Iliad immortal is not the fighting. Any poem can describe a battle. What makes it eternal is the grief. The full-hearted, unbearable, completely human grief that runs through every page. Everyone in this poem is doomed, and Homer makes sure we know it. Hector knows Troy will fall. Achilles knows he'll die young. Even the gods cannot save the mortals they love. Hector knows Troy will fall, and he fights anyway. That's the Iliad's deepest truth. Courage isn't fighting when you think you'll win. It's fighting when you know you won't. Achilles makes the same choice from the other side. He knows his death follows Hector's. He chooses glory and a short life over safety, and a long one. Both men choose and both men pay. Even Zeus weeps for Sarpedon. The king of gods watches his own son die on a battlefield and can do nothing. If gods can grieve, Homer says, then grief is the most fundamental thing in the universe. The poem asks the oldest questions. What is worth dying for? What is worth living for? Is glory enough to justify all this suffering? Homer never gives a simple answer. Only stories, only lives. And it never gives a simple answer. Only stories, only lives. The Iliad doesn't preach, it shows. It puts you inside the experience and lets you feel the weight of every choice. Anger opens the poem. The very first word in the original Greek is menon, rage. But tenderness closes it. Hector buried, a city mourning, wine poured, and horses named one last time. A father kissing the hands of his son's killer. If you remember nothing else from tonight, remember that. The bravest act in all of literature is not a sword fight, it's a kiss. Two enemies recognizing each other as human. That's what the Iliad teaches. Not that war is glorious, not that heroes never die, but that even your enemy weeps the way you weep. This is why we still read it, nearly 3,000 years later. Because the poem tells the truth about what war does to human beings. All of them, winners and losers alike. Because war hasn't changed, and neither has grief, and neither has the courage it takes to face death, knowing you can't defeat it. These things are permanent. Homer understood that permanently. Let that settle for a moment. We've been through a lot tonight. The rage, the grief, the beauty, the horror. Breathe with it. Let the dust of the Trojan plain drift and clear. The campfires still flicker in your imagination. The wine-dark sea still shines. Troy's walls still catch the sunset. These images will stay with you, because Homer made them stay with everyone. Take a breath. We'll step outside the poem now and meet the poet behind it, or the mystery where a poet should be. But the story is finished. The funeral rites are done, but the Iliad will stay with you. It has stayed with everyone who ever heard it. Soldiers, scholars, children, kings. It'll be here tomorrow, and the day after, and the millennium after that. Now let's step behind the poem and ask the strangest question in literary history. Who wrote the Iliad? The honest answer is, nobody knows. And that mystery is almost as old as the poem itself. Ancient tradition calls him Homer, a blind poet from Ionia, the Greek-speaking coast of what's now Turkey. 7 cities claim to be his birthplace. That alone tells you how little anyone really knew. Most scholars place Homer around 750 BCE, give or take a century. But the war he describes dates to roughly 100 BCE. 400 years separate the poet from his story. Imagine that distance. The Trojan War itself, if it happened, belongs to the Bronze Age collapse. A catastrophic period, when civilizations across the Mediterranean crumbled, palaces burned, trade routes vanished, literacy was lost. For centuries after the collapse, the poem wasn't written down. It couldn't be. Writing had been forgotten. Instead, bards memorized the story and sang it aloud, night after night, generation after generation. Oral poetry works differently than written poetry. Bards didn't memorize word for word. They learned patterns, formulas, scenes they could assemble on the fly. Every performance was different. Every telling was alive. Those famous phrases, wine dark sea, rosy fingered dawn, swift-footed Achilles, weren't just beautiful, they were memory tools. Each formula fit the poem's rhythm perfectly, filling a specific metrical slot. Swift-footed Achilles, Hector, tamer of horses, gray-eyed Athena. These epithets helped the singer remember what came next. They were the building blocks of an entire storytelling technology. The great Homeric question has occupied scholars for centuries. Did one poet create the Iliad? Or did it grow gradually from the work of many singers stitched together over generations? In the 1930s, a young American scholar named Milman Parry traveled to Yugoslavia. He found living bards who still performed long epic poems from memory, the last echo of Homer's tradition. Parry proved the Iliad bears every mark of oral composition. The formulas, the repetitions, the standard scenes assembled from memorized building blocks. The poem was born in performance, not on a page. But the Iliad structure is too unified for mere patchwork. The rage of Achilles drives everything. Every scene connects to it. A committee didn't build this. A singular intelligence shaped it. Most scholars now believe something like this. A centuries-long tradition of many singers was crystallized by one extraordinary poet who shaped the material into the masterpiece we know. Homer was both inheritor and genius. The poem was eventually written down, probably in the 8th or 7th century BCE, when the Greeks adopted an alphabet borrowed from the Phoenicians. Sound became text, memory became manuscript. Picture Greece in Homer's era. Small city-states perched on rocky coastlines. Shepherds and farmers and fishermen. A world rebuilding itself from the ruins of the Bronze Age collapse. Just learning to write again. The Iliad became the foundation of Greek education. Boys memorized long passages. They learned their values from Achilles and Hector, the way we might learn from novels or films. Homer was their Bible and Shakespeare combined. Alexander the Great slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. He saw himself as a new Achilles, brilliant, beautiful, fated to die young. He carried Homer's words into battle across the known world. The poem was a mirror. Every Greek found themselves somewhere in its verses. The ambitious saw Agamemnon. The clever saw Odysseus. The brave saw Hector. The passionate saw Achilles. Everyone found their reflection. For centuries, educated Europeans said no. The whole story was myth, invented. A beautiful fiction with no more historical basis than a fairy tale. Then someone went digging. Heinrich Schliemann, a German businessman obsessed with Homer, arrived in Turkey in the 1870s with a copy of the Iliad and a shovel. He was convinced he knew exactly where Troy lay buried. He found layers, not one city but many stacked like nesting bowls. 9 layers spanning 3,000 years. One of them, level 7, had been destroyed by violence and fire around 1200 BCE. The site of Hazarlik is almost certainly ancient Troy, or whatever real place inspired the legend. Located exactly where Homer described it, commanding the strait between Europe and Asia. The poet knew his geography. Whether there was one Trojan War, or many raids and conflicts compressed into legend, something real underlies Homer's poem. Archaeology has confirmed that much. The rest remains beautifully uncertain. Some details in the Iliad match Bronze Age archaeology perfectly. The boar, tusk helmets, the tower shields, the chariot tactics. Homer preserved genuine memories of a vanished military world. Other details blend centuries together. Iron weapons appear alongside bronze ones. Funeral customs from different eras sit side by side. The poem is a telescope through time, slightly blurred but mostly true. The catalogue of ships in Book 2 is a kind of ancient military census preserved in verse. Over 29 contingents listed, each with its homeland and leader. Scholars have mapped every place name and most are real. Over 1,000 names appear in the Iliad, each warrior given a home, a father, sometimes a wife or a trade. Homer grants full identity to men who exist only to die in a single line of verse. Homer grants dignity to even the briefest characters. A warrior falls, and Homer tells us he was a farmer from a specific valley. That his father gave him good horses, that he left a new bride behind. He fell as an oak falls, Homer might say, or a poplar beside a river. Even the Similes honor the dead, comparing warriors to beautiful things, finding dignity in the moment of destruction. The gods in the Iliad are real, present, and terrifyingly unpredictable. They love favorites, punish enemies, switch sides, lie to mortals, and fight each other like a dysfunctional family at a holiday dinner. But here's Homer's deepest insight about the gods. Mortals are more admirable than immortals precisely because mortals die. The gods risk nothing. Achilles and Hector risk everything. That's why they matter more. The gods manipulate mortals constantly. Athena tricks Hector with a fake brother. Apollo lures Achilles away from the gates. Zeus weighs fates on golden scales. Human lives are their game pieces. Yet humans keep choosing. Despite the gods, despite fate, despite knowing the outcome, Hector goes out to fight. Achilles returns to war. Priam walks into the enemy camp. Choice persists even when fate is fixed. Free will and fate coexist in Homer. Characters choose exactly what destiny requires of them, not because they're forced, but because they are who they are. Character is fate. That's the paradox Homer lives inside. The poem's structure is brilliantly compact. Out of 10 years of war, Homer chooses only about 50 days in the final year. Everything before and after is backstory or implied future. Paris stealing Helen, the judgment of the goddesses, the 1,000 ships launching. All of that is backstory. Homer trusts you to know it, or mentions it in passing. The Iliad starts mid-crisis and never slows down. Everything after. The wooden horse, Troy burning, Odysseus wandering home for 10 years. That's sequel. Homer invented the concept of the franchise without meaning to. One story spawned 100 others. Homer chose the tightest, most powerful window into the war. One man's rage, one friend's death. one enemy's burial. Everything that matters about war contained in one furious, grieving, compassionate arc. The Iliad's meter is dactylic hexameter, a rhythm of long and short syllables that sounds like marching feet, or like waves on a shore. Surge and retreat, the heartbeat of the poem. In the original Greek, the poem sounds extraordinary. Even people who don't understand the language can hear the music in it. The crash of syllables when armies collide, the gentleness when a mother holds her son. Homer's similes are unlike anything before or since. In the middle of a battle, he suddenly compares a charging warrior to a mountain lion, or autumn leaves, or wasp defending their nest from a boy with a stick. These similes aren't decorations. They pull the listener out of war for a moment, into farmlands, kitchens, forests, harbors, and then drop them back into combat. Homer gives you the whole world, not just the battle. A young warrior dies on the field. Homer compares him to a garden poppy bowed by rain, its head drooping under the weight of its own seeds, and the spring shower, violence transformed into tender beauty. Violence and beauty, horror and tenderness, always side by side in Homer. He never lets you forget that the men dying on the plain were once babies, once loved, once someone's reason for getting up in the morning. The Iliad does not glorify war. Read carefully, and you'll find the most unflinching anti-war statement in ancient literature. It shows the full cost, physical, psychological, moral, and hides nothing. There is no villain in the Iliad. Hector is noble, Achilles is magnificent. Even Agamemnon has his humanity. Even Paris has his charm. Homer refuses to make it easy for us. That's what makes it great. Even Agamemnon, the man who starts the whole disaster with his arrogance, is given his moment of heroism on the field. And even Paris, the coward, genuinely loves Helen in his shallow, selfish way. Homer's sympathy extends to both sides equally. Greek mothers weep the same as Trojan mothers. Greek boys die as meaninglessly as Trojan boys. The poem refuses to take sides. That's its moral genius. This radical empathy, seeing the enemy as fully human, is what makes the poem eternal. It was revolutionary in the Bronze Age. It's still revolutionary now. We still haven't learned the lesson Homer taught. And it all began with a blind man singing to firelight, or so the legend says. Whether he was one man or many, whether he could see or not, the voice remains. And the voice is everything. The Iliad's influence begins the moment it ends. Its companion piece, the Odyssey, picks up the thread. Odysseus sailing home, 10 more years of wandering, the war's aftershocks rippling outward. Greek tragedy fed directly from Homer's table. The playwright Aeschylus called his own plays mere slices from the great banquet of Homer. Every tragic hero after Achilles walks in his shadow. Virgil wrote the Aeneid for Rome, deliberately modeling it on Homer. He took a minor Trojan character from the Iliad, Aeneas, who barely survives, and made him the founder of an empire. Through Virgil, Troy became the origin story of Rome itself. Romans claimed Trojan ancestry with fierce pride. The losers of Homer's war became the founders of the greatest empire the ancient world had seen. Throughout the Middle Ages, Troy was more famous than Greece. Every kingdom in Europe traced its lineage back to fleeing Trojans. The French claimed descent. The British said they came from Brutus of Troy. Dante placed Homer in limbo, the first circle of his Inferno. Honored among the great poets of antiquity, but unreachable because he lived before Christ. Respected but forever separated by time and faith. Shakespeare borrowed from the Trojan cycle for his play Troilus and Cressida, but made the war cynical, bitter, and unheroic. Shakespeare's Greeks are petty. His Achilles is a brute. He saw the dark side Homer hinted at. Alexander Pope's 1715 translation brought Homer to English readers in elegant rhyming couplets. For a century, Pope's Iliad was the Iliad, polished, aristocratic, tremendously popular. Young John Keats read a different translation, Chapman's Homer, and was so overwhelmed he wrote a sonnet about the experience. He compared it to discovering a new planet. That's what Homer does to people. In the trenches of World War I, Soldiers carried pocket editions of the Iliad. They read Homer by candlelight between bombardments. They recognized their own experience in every line: the mud, the boredom, the meaningless slaughter. They understood Achilles' rage. They understood Hector's doomed sense of duty. They understood the nameless warriors who die far from home with the names of their villages on their lips. Simone Weil, the French philosopher, wrote her famous essay calling the Iliad the poem of force. Force, she said, is the real hero, the thing that turns human beings into objects, into corpses, into nothing. She wrote during the rise of fascism in Europe. The Iliad's warning about the dehumanizing power of violence felt desperately urgent. 3,000 years old, and still the most relevant text she could find. Jonathan Shea, a psychiatrist, used the Iliad to treat Vietnam veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress. He found that Achilles' story mirrors the exact clinical pattern of combat trauma perfectly. Achilles' arc mirrors combat trauma exactly. The betrayal by leadership, the withdrawal from comrades, the berserker rage after losing someone close, the inability to reintegrate. Homer described PTSD 3 millennia early. The Iliad may be the first work to describe what we now call moral injury. The wound that comes not from physical danger, but from witnessing or participating in acts that violate your deepest values. The 2004 film Troy brought the story to millions of new viewers. Brad Pitt played Achilles, Eric Bana played Hector. The visuals were spectacular. But no film captures what Homer does with words alone. Modern translators keep reinventing Homer for new generations. Each translation finds different music in the original Greek. Each one illuminates corners the previous versions left in shadow. Richmond Lattimore's 1951 translation stays close to Homer's formal dignity. Robert Fagel's in 1990 brought muscle and drama. Caroline Alexander in 2015, the first woman to translate the complete Iliad, revealed new emotional depths. Emily Wilson, whose groundbreaking Odyssey translation stripped away centuries of masculine embellishment, brought fresh eyes to the Homeric world. Suddenly the women of the poems became visible again. Madeline Miller's novel The Song of Achilles retells the Iliad through the love story of Achilles and Patroclus. It broke millions of hearts and introduced Homer to readers who might never have picked up the original. Pat Barker's The Silence of the Girls tells the war through Briseis's eyes. The captive woman passed between warriors. The Iliad's story from below, from the people history uses as prizes and footnotes. These modern retellings don't replace Homer. They prove his themes are inexhaustible. Every generation finds new truths in the poem because the poem contains more truth than any single reading can extract. Modern warfare still echoes the Iliad in ways that would make Homer nod in recognition. Proud leaders sending young men to die for reasons that grow hazier with every year of fighting. Every war has its Achilles who fights for pride and glory. Every war has its Hector who fights to protect his home and family. Every war forces people to choose between those two kinds of courage. Every war has its Helen, the cause that no one quite remembers anymore. 10 years into the siege, the Trojans barely mention her. The original reason for fighting dissolves, but the fighting continues. Sound familiar? The Iliad teaches that your enemy is human. The hardest lesson in any war. To see the other side's grief as equal to your own. To understand that their children cry too, that their fathers wait too. Priam kneeling before Achilles. That scene has been reenacted in every peace negotiation, every ceasefire. Every moment when someone finds the courage to see their enemy's face and call it human. To see your enemy's grief as equal to your own. That is Homer's greatest gift to the world. Not strategy, not heroism, not the mechanics of war. Empathy. The hardest and most necessary word. The poem endures because it refuses to simplify. War is terrible and war is glorious, both at once. Courage is real and death is permanent, both at once. Homer holds the contradictions without flinching. Honor matters, and people die horribly pursuing it. Love is real, and it destroys cities. Friendship is the deepest bond, and losing it breaks the strongest man alive. All of this all at once. 3,000 years, and the poem still makes us weep. For Hector's baby scared by a helmet plume, for Priam's trembling hands, for Achilles reaching for a ghost that slips through his fingers. As long as people go to war, the Iliad will be read, not because it celebrates war, but because it tells the truth about what war does. To the winners, to the losers, to the people who wait at home. And as long as people grieve, which is to say, as long as people love, the Iliad will be understood. Because the grief in this poem is the price of love, and Homer never pretends otherwise. The Iliad is not just a poem about a war. It's a poem about what it means to be mortal, to know you will die and to live fully anyway. That's the fire Homer lit, and it hasn't gone out yet. We've come a long way tonight, from the Greek camp to Olympus and back again. From rage to tenderness. From the crash of bronze to the sound of a father weeping. Homer took us everywhere. The poem asked the oldest questions and gave the most honest answers. Not comfortable answers, not simple ones, but true ones. And true answers don't expire, no matter how many centuries pass. 3,000 years, and Hector's baby still cries at the helmet. 3,000 years, and Priam still kneels. 3,000 years, and we still hold our breath when Achilles chases Hector around the walls. As long as people tell stories by firelight, or by screen light, or by any light at all, someone will tell this one. The first great story. The one that taught all the others how to be told. And as long as someone somewhere is lying in the dark listening to a story, the Iliad is alive. It doesn't need a library, it just needs a voice and a willing ear, like tonight, like you. We've traveled far tonight, from the beaches of Troy to the halls of Olympus, from a quarrel over a captive girl to the funeral of the bravest man who ever defended a city. From a quarrel between two proud men to a moment when a father kissed the hands of his son's killer. The distance between those two scenes is the entire journey of the human heart. The Iliad begins with one word, rage. Menon in the Greek, sing O goddess, the rage of Achilles. That first word echoes through every line that follows, through every century that listens. But it ends with gentleness, a father burying his son, a city in mourning, wine poured on ashes, bones wrapped in purple cloth. The loudest poem in literature ends in a whisper. That Arphy, from rage to compassion, is the poem's deepest journey. Deeper than the war, deeper than the heroes. The movement from fury to understanding, from vengeance to mercy. Maybe that's a journey we all take eventually. From fury to understanding. From the certainty that we're right to the recognition that the other person is suffering too. Homer mapped that road first. Think of Achilles sitting with Priam in the lamplight. Two broken men sharing bread and wine across a table that should be a battlefield. That image is worth more than any victory. They don't forgive each other. Homer is too honest for that. They don't pretend the war didn't happen. They simply see each other. And that seeing is enough. Sometimes it's everything. Homer knew something 3,000 years ago that we still struggle with. Sometimes seeing is all we can manage. And sometimes seeing is the bravest thing a human being can do. The campfires are banking now. The coals glow red and gold, settling deeper into ash. The wine, dark sea grows still outside. Wave after patient wave smoothing the sand where armies walk today. Somewhere on the plain, sentries keep their lonely watch. The same watch they've kept for 10 years. Leaning on their spears, eyes scanning the darkness, thinking of homes they can barely remember. The stars turn overhead, the same constellations that Hector saw from Troy's walls. The same stars that Achilles watched from the shore while he wept for his friend. The same stars you see tonight. Time collapses in Homer. The stars you see tonight are his stars. The grief you've felt is his grief. 3,000 years is nothing when the poem is this good. Distance dissolves in firelight and words. Let the ancient voices fade now, but gently, like waves retreating on sand. Like the last note of a lyre drifting into silence. The story isn't gone. It's just resting, like you should be. Hector is at peace. His bones lie in golden cloth beneath Trojan earth. His city mourns him with the honor he earned. His name lives forever in the poem that buried him with such tenderness. Achilles will have his glory and his death, both chosen, both accepted. He traded length of life for depth of meaning. Whether that was wise or foolish, Homer leaves for us to decide. And somewhere between glory and death, there is this night, this quiet, this space where a story ends and sleep begins. That's where we are now, right at the border, and it's comfortable here. Homer sang by firelight 3,000 years ago, and we're still listening. That says something about the poem and something about us. We need these stories the way we need the dark to sleep in. We need stories that hold us, the way Andromache held Hector's head, the way Thetis held her weeping son on the beach. Stories don't fix anything, but they hold us while we're broken. So let this story hold you now. The oldest story, the longest night. The poem that has rocked 3,000 years of listeners gently towards sleep, one hexameter at a time. The war is over for tonight. The torches are out along the walls. The sentries have settled into their cloaks. Even the gods on Olympus have grown quiet. Everything rests. Everything is still. You don't have to stay awake for any of this. The story will be here tomorrow. Like Troy itself, ruined and rebuilt and remembered. Always remembered. That's the thing about great stories. They wait. Your breathing can slow now. Let it match the rhythm of the waves on that ancient shore. The wine, dark sea, has been keeping time for 30 centuries. It won't mind keeping time for you tonight. The wine, dark sea, the rosy-fingered dawn, the tamer of horses. These phrases have been lullabies for 3 millennia. Let them be yours tonight. They were made for evenings exactly like this one. Close your eyes if they aren't closed already. The stars will keep watch. They've been watching since long before Homer, and they'll watch long after. You're in good company tonight. Somewhere a blind poet smiles, his song still carrying across the centuries, still finding ears in the dark, still doing what it was always meant to do, making the night feel less alone. Dream of the wine, dark sea if you want to, of bronze shields catching the first morning light, of horses running free on the Trojan plain, their manes flying, no riders, no war, just the joy of running. Dream of a world where even enemies can sit together and weep, where a father's courage can cross a battlefield, where the hardest thing and the bravest thing are exactly the same. The Iliad will wait for you. It has waited for everyone. For Alexander under his pillow, for soldiers in their trenches, for students and scholars and anyone who ever needed a story bigger than their own trouble. Such were the funeral rites of Hector, tamer of horses. That's how Homer ended it. Simply, gently. The way you close a door at the end of a long day. Not with force. Good night. Sleep well. Let the wine dark sea be your white noise tonight. Let the ancient rhythm carry you down into rest. 3,000 years of listeners have drifted off to these words. You're next. Of shields and heroes. Of the anger that burned a world and the compassion that saved what was left. Of Hector's baby laughing and Priam's hands trembling and Achilles weeping by the sea. Of a world so old it feels like dreaming. Of words so true they haven't aged a single day. Of a poet who saw everything and asked for nothing except that we listen. We listen tonight. Good night, and thank you for listening. The Iliad will be here when you wake. Patient as stone, warm as fire, deep as the wine, dark sea. Rest now, the poem keeps watch. Such were the funeral rites of Hector, tamer of horses. Good night, sleep well. Dream deep. The wine, dark sea will still be here in the morning, and so will Homer, and so will you.